Hi, and welcome to another mailbox. This is where I get some comments or messages that have been sent to me, some of the more interesting ones from the past week, and go through my responses to them, especially where more complete responses are required, where it's not easy to put it in a reply on YouTube itself, although sometimes I'll do a smaller one and then talk about it in more detail here. The first one is from Patron. Obviously, I sort of give priority to Patron questions. It's quite a longish one. What the question essentially is asking is if I were in charge of, it says, of the replacement for WoW in Blizzard. I'm not sure what that means. It says, what would you like to implement? So I'll go through, first of all, you can interpret this question in two ways. The first way is, let's say, what would you like introducing in the game? That's how most people interpret. But then another interpretation is, let's say you were actually in charge of it. What could you do? Because if, in real terms, if I was being realistic, not that it's realistic for me to be in charge of World of Warcraft, but let's say it were in some fantasy realm, then there would actually be some things I would have to support that I don't want in the game. A classic example would be the idea of realms. I've said many times before, it's outdated, the concept of realms. The technology doesn't require there to be realms. You could just have, we've already got sharding technology in the game. You can see in other MMOs how it's not needed at all. You could just have people, someone, at work or school or something, oh, you should play World of Warcraft with me. All right, I'll get the game. They download it, and then they could just make a party with it. They don't have to think about, what realm should I make it on? There's no need for it. But they're keeping it in because of money. So again, if I was in charge of World of Warcraft, I wouldn't have that decision. I would be told, no, we're keeping it in because we make quite a lot of money from character transfers. So let's go through the specific ones here. So it says, first of all, still sub or free to play? Sub, because there are so many millions of people who are subscribing to it. There are different types of free to play model. The good one, the other MMOs I play, of course, have a sort of free to play model. So I can't actually say Star Wars The Old Republic anymore because I still can't download it onto this computer. I have a plan to do that, but I'm waiting for this summer. I haven't even got time to play it at the moment anyway. Like Elder Scrolls Online, even Lord of the Rings Online, stuff like that. So you have a system where, in theory, it's free to play. But there are things that you will want to get realistically in order to play it, and you can just pay small amounts for the specific bits of content that you want, and that sort of works. Although you end up paying more in the long run on that anyway. But you can also have the option of a subscription. So I still have a subscription on Elder Scrolls Online, for example, and just by paying that subscription, you get those features anyway included in the subscription, and you get a certain number of tokens for the store. But there's no need, as I say, at the moment, there's plenty of people subscribing, so there's no need not to. But I would like to go partially into it. I would like, with the online store, to have two types of currency. I don't mean it should be like the other MMOs where you have to pay money to buy a box of currency, crowns or something like that. But there should be a currency that you can use, and it's interchangeable. You can use money, you can just use your Visa or something, and then you could use these points as well. And you should get so many points for your subscription. So many points every month when your subscription renews successfully. And these can build up, and you can get things off the online store, in particular services. So you might have a situation where, say, after 6 months, someone has saved up enough to get a character transfer, including faction transfers necessary. So if you played for a couple of years on the same realm, well, you could potentially move 4 characters across factions and servers and stuff like that. That would at least go some way to solving some of the problems. But again, they probably wouldn't, because do you know what? It's the same situation now. People are paying it as it is now, so why would you change it? You wouldn't. Totally new engine or graphics, I don't think they can. I think there are certain core features of the game that have to remain. They can improve them. But like, if you look at they've improved all the new, I think all the races, well, I'm sure they have had updates of graphics now in the past couple of years. But they're, although they're better, they're still on the same basic design. So they'll have to keep that. I would like a Warcraft 5, obviously, to be an MMO as well. And I would like that to have a different engine and very different graphics style. Continue with WoW, set WoW lore, but jump in anywhere along the time and pick out themes untapped so far. There are only so many themes. When you think about it, whenever anyone's speculating about what the next expansion is going to be, The only theme that hasn't been explored in great detail that anyone ever says is, you know, the Naga with Queen Ashara. That's all anyone ever says. So there isn't that much really untapped stuff that is in the consciousness of the World of Warcraft player. I would prefer properly new lore, but they just don't seem to want to do that. They just seem to want to keep recycling storylines from Warcraft 3. Eliminate the now outdated 2-faction system. Again, I think it's just a core feature of the game. I would like them to do that. It would have been really easy to do that originally, I've always thought, because if you think about it, let's take the Horde for example. So Orcs, Tauren and Trolls, they are the Horde. That's what the Horde is. They share bonds of like fellowship, was brought together by Thrall. Makes sense. When they made the game, World of Warcraft, of course you had to have these factions. Obviously they couldn't leave out the Forsaken, because they'd been something you could play in Warcraft 3. Very popular. I like playing them. They were my favourite army in Warcraft 3. You can't... So you had to put them somewhere. Obviously they couldn't join the Alliance. Doesn't make sense, because, you know, Lordaeron would have nothing to do with them, and although Lordaeron's sort of gone now, you know, Stormwind, Kingdom of Stormwind also wouldn't have anything to do with them because of that. So it had to be the Horde, but it's just a marriage of convenience. It's actually ironic now that the leader of the Forsaken is now a war chief, because they really don't fit. And then the other ones don't fit either. The Blood Elves don't really fit with the Horde. They just join. You know, it's like they come up with some tenuous reason for it. The reason for the Goblins, the Blood Elves, especially the Blood Elves and the Forsaken, joining the Horde is because it makes more sense than joining the Alliance. That's all there is to it. But those three could easily have formed another faction of, you know, the outcasts, basically, the ones who don't fit in anywhere else. But, you know, not all of those races were there at the start. In retrospect, maybe you could say, well, that would have opened itself up to 3 races. You could have had Horde, Trolls, Tauren in one faction. You could have had Blood Elves, Goblins, and Forsaken in another. And then you could have Humans, Dwarves, and Night Elves in another. And stuff the gnomes. And the Worgen never really needed to come in, did they? And the Pandaren, same as they've done anyway. They could have been in any of the 3 factions. Next one, let's have a look. Introduce multi-factions that players can swap affiliation to and blah, blah, blah. I always say that PvE and PvP are best when they are completely separate. Factions just create barriers in PvE. So that situation where I said someone at work say, you get this game. And it's like, but one likes one faction, one likes another. That's a division. That's a reason not to play the game, because you either can't play with your friends, or one of you has to play a faction that they don't really like. And how does that make sense of PvE? PvP, it makes perfect sense. So factions for PvP, not for PvE. But they're so woven together. And again, they would never change that. PvP in dedicated areas, I've already talked about that before. I've talked about that at Infinite. Absolutely. You have a huge zone, and I mean a huge zone. I don't mean a... Winter Grasp was a half-arsed effort to do what better games have done. You don't do that. I will actually do a video on it, comparing it with Elder Scrolls Online this summer. I'm going to do a series this summer on how some of the features in WoW compare with Elder Scrolls Online. Some of them I'm going to actually, you know, say that while World of Warcraft does it better, some of them not so much. Having whole world scaling for leveling, yes, absolutely in favour of that. And pertinent for all endgame activities. I'm not so much in favour of that. Let's say all world scaling existed right now, is brought in across the board for Legion. I would be in favour of the following. You can level from 1 to 100, in other words, the old levels, in any pre-level 100 zone, up to and including WOD. But then to level up from 100 to 110, which is the new levels, you have to do that in the new content zones. That's how I would have it. Obviously, I'm not saying you couldn't get any experience leveling the other ones, but I would make it much smaller, so it wasn't worth it. I would want people leveling up essentially in the new zones. I'm not saying it has to be like that, but that's how I would want it, for the purpose of driving the narrative. Because I do like, in World of Warcraft, leveling. The only expansion where I haven't liked the leveling is Cataclysm. That's the one where I just thought, no, I don't like this. Eliminate flying from the start of the game, or limit flying to specific areas or quit. Genie's out the bottle now. You've just got to keep it in. They're pushing it by having it so you don't have flying for like the first 9 months. I think that's a good compromise. You'd never get away with doing anything more than that. Shake up classes, talents, glyphs, or blah, blah, blah. Well, they sort of done that for Legion. If what I would like to do, or what I'd like Blizzard to do, but I think it would be very brave, and by brave I mean potentially potentially on the same level as saying we're not going to have flying ever again, is to vastly reduce the number of specs in the game. I don't think pure DPS classes need 3 specs for DPS. I don't, I think all classes should have no more than 2 DPS specs. And if I'm honest, would probably prefer it if they only had 1. And if that meant as a mage you only had 1 spec, you were just a mage, so be it. But again, I really don't see them getting away with that. That's more one of those things if you were to design it again. Do away with rancid RNG. Well, what one person's rancid RNG is another person's, oh, I like this. So some people like the proc-based gameplay, for example, and some don't. Similar sort of thing here. But those are my sort of specific thoughts on that one anyway, what I would do. But as I say, some of it would be constrained by what realistically you could do. There are some things that I would like to do, and there are a lot of things that I would think, even if I was in charge, I'd never get away with it. Right, so on to some other questions. So one of these, this is about add-ons, notifications. So my leader is pushing for that we all use the same add-on. This is for boss mods. Unfortunately, he chose Bigwigs. I'd have said that a few years ago, but actually it is the better one. And I'm kind of lost in the sounds. Now, it says there are like 5 types of sound in Bigwigs, but I don't know what he's doing. What all I hear is to-dum. But I just overhear that or just don't know what's important. There's a couple of things about this. First of all, on one level, that's just getting used to it. On another level, you can totally customize the sounds in it. Just play about in the options. You can get rid of sounds for something you don't want to sound for. You can change the sound. If you just don't like a particular sound, you can change it for a different sound. So you can customize all those sounds. One thing that put me off at first was every time you killed a boss, it did that little fanfare thing. I don't want that. But you can even get rid of that. Next one. Now, there were quite a lot of questions related to the video I did on will Sargeras be the last boss. That in itself was prompted from a question, because it's actually quite funny in a lot of the replies to some of these questions. I feel like I'm supporting the idea that Sargeras is going to be the last boss of Legion. I don't think it is. I said that at the beginning of the video. I really don't think it is. I don't think it should be, and I don't think it will be. The reason I did the video is because, in actual fact, there are a number of things that can lead to the conclusion that maybe it is. I just don't think it should be, and I don't think it is. But yeah, I played devil's advocate a lot on there. But anyway, some of the specific questions on it. So it says, first of all, well, this is along with several bits of this. So I'll take this one at a time. It says, how can you not know that we are killing Kil'jaeden in the Twisted Nether? You don't know that either. We don't know that. It says here, it's all in the fight and you can read it in the journal. Doesn't say anything about the Twisted Nether in the journal. Not a thing. Says we're doing it aboard a spaceship. And in fact, that spaceship isn't even in flight. According to the Dungeon Journal, I've not done this in PTR. All I can do is watch Fat Boss videos. As you read the Dungeon Journal, it's on Azeroth, this thing. It takes off during the fight. And then we look at, okay, so what you're imagining for all that green hyperspace stuff you see is the Twisted Nether. Now, it may be. If you were to ask a Blizzard developer, I'm going to run on the strong suspicion that they've not even thought about it. I think for the Blizzard developers that came up with it, it's just a hyperspace thing. Is it the Twisted Nether? I can make a strong argument for the fact it is not the Twisted Nether that you are travelling through while you are moving from Azeroth to Argus, because that's where we're heading. For whatever reason, I don't even know what reason we're going to Argus. That shithole. That's what he's just left there. But... and obviously we're going to Argus, so that's the sort of narrative for that. I was imagining that we'd defeat Kil'jaeden, and then Velen we'd nick the spaceships, and Velen would work out how to get them to Argus. Obviously, it looks like we're travelling that way. But here's the reason why I don't think it's the Twisted Nether. The Twisted Nether, for those who don't know, I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but it's basically where the demons live. So all these demon worlds we go to, and we've been to quite a few demon worlds just in Legion, but they've also appeared in previous expansions. what's one thing you notice? So you go to Mardum, for example. You go to the other demon worlds we've sort of been to. I can't even remember the names of them. We go to that little rock where we fought Archimond on Mythic mode at the end of Hellfire Citadel. Wherever you've seen the Twisted Nether, one thing that strikes me is that it's quite purple. The lands, the rocks and everything have got that sort of fell green tint to them. But the sky tends to be predominantly purple. I'm not saying completely, but largely purple. What I can't help but notice, watching videos of people who've done Kill Jaden on the PTR, is that it's all green. So I'm interpreting that as it's a sort of hyperspace that we're travelling through, not the Twisted Nether. It's not proof, but what I am saying is Blizzard have not put the words Twisted Nether anywhere near the Kill Jaden fight, so we don't know that. That being said, I was not arguing that we're not killing Kill Jaden in the Twisted Nether. I didn't say that at all. What I said is that we don't know that. I said it would make sense if he was dead. The last thing we need is to be... We've already defeated Kill Jaden in the Burning Crusade. We never killed him. We just defeated him. Here we're actually going to kill him, we assume. We don't really need him coming back later on. I'm not in favour of villains coming back. Like, there's a limit, isn't there? I mean, Kel'Thas took the piss. He came back for a second time in the same expansion. You know, we've also had Neltharion and Onyxia... Not Neltharion, sorry, Nefarian coming back. I mean, Neltharion technically coming back, but he... that's back from Warcraft 2, isn't he? You know, so many of these baddies have come back, but we don't really need them coming back for a third time, do we? So that's that first point there. It says, second, I really don't think we're going to kill Sargeras. Neither do I. In my opinion, it would be a letdown. That's exactly what I argued. He's been built up to a status beyond being a god, and having us mere mortals kill him. It says, come on, it's stupid and retarded. There's plenty of others that we've killed. You know, the same thing was said in Wrath of the Lich King of defeating Malagos. I mean, he was a dragon aspect. Things have just got grander and grander in World of Warcraft. Okay? Like, in World of Warcraft, what we were doing, we were defeating Cthulhu, but we were only, like, defeating his toenail. The thing we fought, that Cthulhu thing, was only supposed to be a little appendage. So we knew we weren't killing the old god. We were just defeating a manifestation that was like equivalent to his toenail. You know, Nefarian was a dragon. I mean, that was Nefarian and Onyxia. I mean, that was grand enough for World of Warcraft. You know, Kel'Thuzad, well, he's a lich. You know, they're powerful, but you know, it's conceivable we can kill these guys. Ragnaros, Elemental Lord. Again, we know we're not finishing him off for good. We're just defeating him. So, and then TBC, you know, same sort of thing. Illidan's just a guy, you know. He's grown some wings and hooves, but he's still just a guy. And Kel'Thas is just a guy, and Vash is just a guyette. You know, we didn't really defeat anything super grand. Then it came to Wrath. I remember in Wrath Beta going around this place thinking, this is weird. Like, in the lore up to this point, we've found evidence that the Titans sort of existed. You know, they're mythical. Up until Wrath, Titans are mythical. They're legends, like Greek mythology. We sort of find some evidence that maybe they existed in like Alderman and things, places like that. And you know, and with the discs of Doofa, then you know that's again pretty strong evidence again. So we're only just starting to think maybe these things are actually real. Then we go to like Northrend, and it's like it's obvious, isn't it? You got these huge Titan constructs, huge Titan buildings. Bleeding obvious. And again, I thought that Wrath was getting $2,000 then, and that was 10 years ago. I thought that was $2,000. You know, and because we're defeating like the Scourge, the whole Scourge, and then I mean, kill Jaden, you could argue at end of TBC, but we were only stuffing him back down a hole. We weren't killing him. And then it just got grander and grander. So, you know, also Malagos, yeah. So we're defeating a dragon aspect. These are massively powerful. Hugely powerful. How can we do that? And they sort of came with these other dragons. But they're just normal dragons. I know Alistraza was sort of in the background, but she didn't do anything. And it just got grander and grander and grander. So the idea that defeating Kill Jaden is stupid, considering how grand the foes we've defeated so far have become, it's not that stupid at all. As I say, you had a guy, and I'll come to that later actually, but you had a guy already attack Sargeras a long time ago and wound him. And then it says the last one. It says what should happen in Argus raid against Argus is that we should fight him, but blah 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 blah. Defeated it. Well, probably. Yeah, we're just defeating his plans, I think. I don't even think Sargeras is on Argus. I have no reason to believe he's even there. But again, we'll find this out later. And it says here again, talking about, it says, you literally have a background behind you of Sargeras just slicing planets infested with old gods in half. How the heck would we fight him? Blah, 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 blah. I don't know. But someone has fought him. An orc has fought him in the past. And in fact, that's what I sort of said to this as usual. Look, Broxigor. Broxigor fought him. And as I also noted on the response to that, it says he managed to scratch him, literally. Yes, one orc managed to scratch him with a wooden axe. A wooden axe. Now, what about a load of us who are now the most insanely powerful creatures ever to draw breath with proper weapons and gnome launchers? I think I added into the response as well. That'd be good. Can we have gnome launchers, please? We actually could surely do more. The fact that you can have an orc with a wooden axe wound Sargeras sort of moves away from this, it's a planet, what can you possibly do to it? All right. We also have to think, people always try and use this as if, oh, in reality, you can't do this. In reality, we don't have people the size of planets. Also, it may be that they're not actually the size of a planet anyway. People just assume it's planet size. Now, first of all, you talk about that image. That image, okay, let me compare it with this image. I'm just going to put an image up here. This is an image of Napoleon and what I assume is George III. They aren't bigger than the world. They were just guys. I know Napoleon wasn't actually as short as some people say he was, but they were just two guys. And yet here they're carving up a world here. They must be huge. No, it's just an illustration. Same as that illustration is just an illustration. We know that embryonic titans are sort of, that planets form like the embryo, but that's like an egg. That could be way, way bigger than an actual titan. We know that titans are pretty big, because we know, I can't remember who it was now, but we know one Titan. Sorry if you can hear noise outside, but it's too hot to close the window. We know that one Titan reached down and pulled off Sargeras, one of the old gods, and that's when they decided actually pulling old gods off Azeroth isn't going to work. So we know that they are huge, but we don't know that they're massively huge. We know that they can be attacked with a wooden axe. That's all I would say on that subject. Anything else is just you trying to bring realism to a fantasy situation that isn't going to work, in my view. Then a final answer was, my point was, I don't believe we might actually fight Sargeras himself. Well, neither do I. Like, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I don't think we're going to be fighting Sargeras. It says, only see two options if we do. One, it's an avatar of Sargeras. We're already sort of doing that in Tomb of Sargeras. Isn't one of the bosses like his avatar? I know that Aegwin basically defeated Lox down there. That would be a bit of a letdown. Believe that not kill Jane, but Sargeras himself could turn good again. An interesting philosophical point here. I don't think we can think. I am actually going to have to shut that window. So yeah, I don't think we can talk about Sargeras in terms of good and evil. I don't think he's either. You know, saying Sargeras is evil because he wants to kill Azeroth. He's got nothing against us, by the way. He wants to kill Azeroth. That's like saying we're evil when we want a fried egg sandwich. You know what I mean? You know, he has a reason for doing it, which is not unreasonable. So he, from his point of view, he might consider it the equivalent of putting down a dog that's suffering and can't possibly get any better. So yeah, I don't think we can talk in terms of good or evil. So if you want to talk in terms of will he change his mind, I think that would be a massive cop-out. Also, what's the end result of it going to be? It's going to be on our side. We're going to have a Titan on our side. You have to remember they introduced into the lore the idea that all the other Titans were dead, that the Pantheon was dead at the hands of Sargeras, simply because we were getting to this point now where in the lore it was now bleeding obvious that Titans existed, and it even looked like we can sort of communicate with them. You know, we had the Algalon thing and things like that. So there's possible to, in theory, message them and bring them to our aid. At that point, you start to think we can't really have Titans on our side because, as people have already pointed out, they're really powerful. So having Sargeras on our side, same sort of thing. It becomes silly. Next one, it says, there is a slight... A lot of these questions are based on this, by the way. It says, there's a slight exception to the only killed in the Twisted Nether rule. It says, I don't remember the exact details. Neither do I, actually. But it's basically been confirmed, stated that in places strongly tied to the Nether, and I think there were some other small exceptions, demons can be completely killed. I remember it being fairly vague answer. It's likely to be a fairly vague answer because at the end of the day, this rule about the Twisted Nether only came about so that we could kill a demon twice anyway. I'm pretty sure it only came about as a result of Archimonde, because he clearly died in Warcraft 3. We revisited, it was the same basic death in TBC in Battle of Mount Argyll. They wanted to bring Archimonde back. Oh, how do we do that? We killed him. He died in appalling agony by wisps. What do we do? Oh, there's this rule, right, where actually their spirit just returns to the Twisted Nether and coalesces and regrows there. So, but if you kill them in the Twisted Nether, because you have to have something to kill them completely, you can't have demons be actually properly immortal, because that's just not fair. So, but if you kill them in the Twisted Nether, then it's all cool. So that was just brought in on the fly, and then they've come up with situations. Like Blizzard have always done this. They have always sort of changed the law as they see fit to fit whatever new story they want to do. It's only with the introduction of these Warcraft Chronicles, these books they've been bringing out, which the second volume's out now, that they've said, look, we're going to tie it down. We're deciding, we're setting it in stone now. We're not just going to keep changing it, because it's massively annoying to keep changing it. So, but yeah, you know, I don't know what the rules are. There will be rules. All I hope is that Kil'jaeden is properly dead. I don't care whether we're killing him in the Twisted Nether or not. I just hope it's not. There's no cop out and he comes back later. Was only a setback. Is beyond a meme. It's bad. It's bad writing. Next one, it says, I feel like you forgot the old gods was just as much, if not more, of the reason for most of our past raids, etc. No, I'm not. What I was arguing was that people don't know anything about the Void, effectively, in the game. The only people that know anything about it are people that read around the stuff that's in the game. You get the average World of Warcraft player who just plays World of Warcraft. I don't mean just that game, but just plays Warcraft. Doesn't read any books, doesn't read any lore around it or anything like that. Doesn't watch Novel. They are not going to know very much about it. They don't even know a great deal about Old Gods. They don't know more. There's been a little bit. You've had little bits of information about the Old Gods, not that much. And then a response here came that's Saronite, which was all over the northern parts of the Northrend area, was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yogg-Saron's blood. It was certainly Old God blood. I can't remember if it was Yogg-Saron's or not. It may well have been. That makes sense. But who knows that? If I go to a World of Warcraft player who's been playing ever since vanilla, but doesn't read around it, just plays the game, and say to them, oh, Saronite's actually blood, do you know? They'll go, oh, is it really? Do you know whose blood it is? No. Lich King's? I guarantee that's what the response would be. So we just don't know anything about them. Then another one here says, I really think the Void Lords are better entwined into the current existing lore than the Panda guys were. Maybe that the Panda guys were, but now the Panda guys, or should we call them Pandaren, are now very much in the lore, because we've had a whole expansion where they explained a lot of it, and it was new stuff, bear in mind. I mean, Pandaren in Warcraft, you had Chen Stormstout in Warcraft 3, that was about it, wasn't it? So, you know, they've properly been fleshed out. The Void Gods have never, you know, the old gods, like the ones on Azeroth and the Void Lords that sort of sent them, they've never been fleshed out. Ever. We don't know anything about them. Sure, if we do an actual proper old gods expansion, I mean, I know Cataclysm was sort of one, but that's another thing. Like, even when I've done quests, because what you notice now, what I don't like, what I'd never liked about Cataclysm, they changed all the 1 to 60 content, so it was all very old godsy related. Okay, all these quests that are leading up to you as if Deathwing's the major baddie now, when actually now he's not. At the time he was, and now he's not. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. But I haven't done all of those new quests because I don't like them, but I've done a few of them. I've actually done several zones worth. I don't mean a few like 2 or 3. I mean several zones worth. And you learn nothing about the Void Lords from these quests. Nothing at all. Next one, it says, I'm going back now, sorry about this. It says, we weren't fighting Kill Jaden on Azeroth. We actually were. The Dungeon Journal says we are. He takes off during the fight. Where we're fighting then is another thing. It says, we're fighting on a spaceship in what seems to be the Great Dark. We ain't got a clue where it is. It says, what seems to be? What does it seem to be? It's lots of green. That's what we see. It's hyperspace. It's like World of Warcraft hyperspace. It says, however, some people have argued the spaceship takes part in the Twisted Nether. So I've already gone through my reasons why it doesn't make sense for it to be the Twisted Nether. But of course, who knows? Blizzard could just... A Blizzard developer... I don't think they've even thought about it. I don't think they've thought about it in the slightest. I just think that, you know, so at some point, they're going to be asked the question, are they? Someone is going to ask that question, whether it be one of these live Q&As, whether it be at BlizzCon. Someone is going to ask, where the hell was that spaceship when it was in transit? And it may well be that they say, the Twisted Nether, without any real thought put into it, and then it becomes canon. But, yeah, so I've already gone through that. And then the last one, it says, my 2 cents, the next expansion will be something on the lines of Wrath of the Ice Queen, with Jana as main villain, aligned with the old gods of our blah, 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 blah. It's not that I've not put this in because I think that's going to be the case, but it would be an interesting case, wouldn't it? There are a lot of loose ends with characters, and this comes on to my very final question in a moment, where they sort of bring them in, do something with them, and then sort of send them on their way again. Like Jana, for example. So Jana has very much changed. In Warcraft 3 and the early years of World of Warcraft, she was very much someone who tried to bring the Horde and the Alliance together. She was very pro-peace and harmony. That all changed with the destruction of Faramore, of course. Which is rather strange, I felt. I don't think it ever made sense to me, because she's seen so many people killed on both sides as a result of the war. To get angry over a pissy little tower, even though it had someone that she was very fond of, but she's been very fond of several people who've been killed, seemed a little bit odd to me, that she would suddenly be anti-Horde, when she knew full well it was the result of one person who has been dealt with since. That all seemed very, very odd. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that they haven't got a long-term plan for her. At some point they will decide to do something with her. And this may well be it. I mean, obviously, you look at her at the moment, she's obviously no friend of the Horde. She is a violent enemy of the Horde. But also the Alliance are none too happy with her either. And Anduin, of course, is not going to be, as we saw at the beginning of Legion, again, just to confirm it, he is not going to be her ally in her sort of crusade against the Horde. So you could well imagine a situation where she becomes extra to both of them and then forms a common enemy. So yeah, but they'd have to do a storyline in a way, because she would never also, at the moment, in terms of her character, act against the Alliance. Even though she's not really on the side of the Alliance anymore, she thinks she is, so she wouldn't do anything that harms the Alliance. So you'd have to create a storyline whereby she saw doing some harm to the Alliance as if justified by the greater good or something. And then the very last question is, I still don't understand why Rathian has not been seen. So Rathian, so he can tell me why he didn't do anything when the Legion came. Again, it's another classic case of it's a character that's sort of there, and they have no use for him at the moment. He was originally going to be Ebonhorn, or at least he was in Alpha when you did the quest in High Mountain, and Ebonhorn, like the Tauran shaman, reveals himself to be that dragon, that black dragon. Well, in Alpha, originally, revealed himself to be Rathian. I don't think that made a lot of sense then. But so they got rid of that and just made him a normal black dragon that had been uncorrupted by whoever the hell. I've forgotten his name now, the Tauran High Mountain guy. And so that's another one where there's a loose end there. But there's a lot of characters in it. I think it's fine for them to be used in an expansion and then just sort of ignored for a bit. And then maybe you bring them back. If they're popular, then you bring them back later on to do something. If they're not that popular, just quietly leave them alone. I think Rathian's fairly popular. You know, they could well bring him back. I mean, they could easily... I was talking about who's going to be our next guide in that video, wasn't I? In the next expansion. They could just bring Rathian back for that, and that would work too. But But anyway, those are some of my thoughts on some of the more interesting statements and questions. A lot of them themed around one particular video this week by the looks of it. But again, I'll do this each week. So thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.